So I grew up in a place called Ogden, Utah, which is I think it's about 80,000 people. It's set up right against the Wasatch Mountains, and I always liked art growing up. It was just something I just sort of was drawn to, and my parents encouraged it to some degree. You know, I was one of those kids who I would hear there was an art contest coming up in school, and so I would always try to enter that contest. And then growing up in elementary school, I had this friend, Jerry, who also liked to do art, and we were sort of the two competing artists. I think a lot of people had that. There's like rivalry in school. I mean, there were a few others, but it seemed like it was always the two of us that were always sort of trying to, in a friendly way, beat each other at these silly art contests. But he was definitely a better artist than me. Like, he just had this natural talent that, I mean, I had some, but he was beyond me. But yeah, so we would do these. You know, we'd always enter our pictures. You know, pictures of, I don't know. They were usually like pictures of hawks, like grabbing rabbits and panthers or something, and you know, snakes and just like cool stuff like that. And then I remember, it was funny, I was thinking about this the other day, and in 6th grade, I wanted to do like a person. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do a portrait of somebody. And so I was just looking through this filing cabinet in the library that had like historical figures, and I was looking through, and I just saw this picture. I didn't know who it was. I'm like, oh, cool. I liked the lighting. It was black and white, and I liked the highlights that were on the guy's eyes and everything. And then I started drawing. It's a picture of Hitler. But I had no idea. You know, I just thought it was a cool picture. And so I drew this picture, you know, fully rendered, and nobody said, my parents didn't say, you know, you probably shouldn't draw. My teacher didn't say anything to me. So I had this, and I think my teacher still has it. I've heard that my 6th grade teacher still has this portrait that I did of Hitler, which I'm like, why weren't people telling me that I shouldn't be doing this? You know, give me a picture of something else. So I'm kind of embarrassed by that, but I kind of want to see it too, just to see what it turned out like. I just don't remember. But she was impressed with it. But it's also horrible that I did that. But you know, it was in innocence. I didn't know. So yeah. So we did. You know, I always enjoyed art. I have an uncle who is an artist, and he kind of inspired me as well when I would see his work. And I remember very, very briefly taking some, I think it was, maybe we only met twice. We took like some art lessons from him. And then I remember asking him to draw me a giant Darth Vader that I could hang on my door. And I wanted it to take up the whole door. Like, you know, you hang it, hang it, and it can drape down the door, and it's a giant. And he did that for me, and I remember that. I wish I still had that. And so that was kind of an inspiration to me, just seeing his work. And when I'd go to his house, I'd see the paintings that he would do. And then you know, it's one of those things where I grew up. It wasn't really encouraged to do art as a career. I mean, there were very few opportunities around the area to do that as a career, and very few opportunities to do to even study it. I remember in high school, you know, AP art, advanced placement art. You'd go in, and it was like, well, there's some magazines back there. Go pick some out, and you know, draw some pictures. You know, I mean, it was a little more than that, but that sort of was the gist of it, and that was a little bit unfortunate, but that's just the way that it was. So, you know, and then I remember, I've told this story before, but I think it was maybe 6th grade seems to be this time that I was really thinking about it. I wanted to do special effects because I loved like horror movies, and I was really into Fangoria, and I've told this before, but I had these all these Freddy Krueger posters, like these 3 Freddy Krueger posters in my room that were sort of terrifying. They terrified my sister. Yeah, I remember at like a friend's birthday party, we would have like Friday the 13th marathons, you know, and we'd watch like I guess there were probably only 4 of them out at the time, maybe 5, and we'd watch all of them. And then when The Fly came out, my friend's dad took us to see The Fly, which I was not old enough to see The Fly. And then my dad took us to see Poltergeist. And that came out in like 84 or something like that. I mean, I was just a little kid. And we went and saw Poltergeist. And yeah, it scared me, but also I was fascinated with it because it's got a lot of cool effects in it. But I was just sort of, I wouldn't say obsessed, but I really liked sort of the prosthetics, and I liked that part of special effects. And I remember talking to one of my art teachers in school, just saying, well, what would I have to do to like do this thing? And her response was, oh, I think you have to go to California to do that. I was in 6th grade, and it's like, well, okay, it's California. But that was it. That was like the end of it. I wish that, and we didn't have the internet back then, so I wished I had known a little more about what I needed to do, other than go to California. But ultimately, I mean, that's what I did, I guess. I went to California. So I started studying information systems, because I started getting into computers. Computers are cool. For a long time, I was afraid to even turn them on. And then I started getting into computer games, and like Dark Forces was a big one. And then I remember when Mech Warrior came out, and I went down to my friend's house, and he had Mech Warrior, and he had speakers, and like stereo. It was like in stereo, and there was some opening cinematic cutscene that just like blew my mind. And now it's probably horrible now if I look at it now, but at the time it just blew my mind. And so then, I think I could start seeing sort of some art potential in video games. I mean, before that, they just couldn't do a whole lot. It was very simple, and I never thought of art in video games. I never kind of put the two together, even though I loved video games growing up. My dad had we always seemed to have some sort of video games. Like, he liked computer games as well, and he still does, actually. I was talking to him last night, and he was like, "Are you playing Diablo 3?" I'm like, "No, it won't run on my computer." And he's all, "Oh man, I love it." He's like, "Uncle Brent, he's at level 60, and I'm at 40 or something like that." And so he's actually he loves Diablo, which is cool. It's cool that my dad likes the field that I'm in, And when he comes, he likes to play. Usually he'll sit down and play video games, and then I'll take my mom to a cafe and we'll sit and chat, and he'll stay home and play games. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, so just growing up loving video games, I remember at a friend's birthday party, and he had a 2600, and I was playing Asteroids on it. And everyone's upstairs eating cake and stuff, and I'm like, no, I'm just like wanting to turn Asteroids over and over, because that was always my goal, was to play it. Because that's all, I mean, you didn't get a reward, right? It just turned over, and you'd see everything set back to 0, and you'd start the game again. And so they're like, "Aren't you going to come up and eat?" "Oh, I've got to turn Asteroids over." So I'd stay down and play Asteroids. And then, I played, oh man, I played kind of whatever came out, whether we had it or a friend had it. And, I had this, I told this story, but I had this, my sister was getting an NES for Christmas, and I knew she was getting it. I knew where it was. And so I would stay home from school sick, and I would go and unwrap the whole thing. I'd take it all out, hook it up to the TV in my parents' room, and I would play Super Mario Brothers 2 like all day while they were all at work in school. And then, when it was getting close to time that they were going to come home, I'd wrap everything back up and put it away. And then my friend called me after he saw this interview I did, and I told that story. And he called me and said, "No," he said, "Yeah, you used to bring that game to my house too." So I would pass this game around, I guess, and share it with everybody, even though my sister was supposed to get it for Christmas. So it's kind of bad, but yeah. So that shows you how much I enjoyed playing games. And my son has that too. He really likes to play games. He's 8 now, and he's super into games, Plants vs. Zombies, and then the other day he ran into his room, and he was sitting on his bed, and I walked in, and he hid something under the covers, and I'm like, "What are you looking at?" And he's like, "Nothing." I'm like, "Well, what is that?" So I went over there and pulled it out, and he had Left 4 Dead, the case. He's not allowed to play it, but he was fascinated with the imagery of like the hand, you know, on there, and has zombies inside, and so he's definitely gotten that from me, I guess, because I really enjoyed that kind of stuff when I was a kid. But I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting off topic, but this is kind of all ties in, I guess, to how I ended up in games. Okay, so I thought, you know, I'm not going to be able to do that for a career. It wasn't really encouraged at my house, so I started studying information systems and got into an accounting class because you had to take all these business classes, and I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. It wasn't that I hated it. I mean, I did hate it, but I also couldn't do it. Like, it was so. I think it was the first thing I had tried and really was just completely failing at, and it's accounting 101. It's like accounting, just like just barely getting started in accounting, and I couldn't do it. I got a tutor who was like the accounting, I don't know, king of accounting at the college. I don't know what the title is. So she was trying to help me, and I withdrew from the class, and at that point I kind of knew I've got to do something else, because I knew that it was just going to get harder, and my brain wasn't wired for it. So I just I ran into a friend around Christmas time that I went to high school with, and he told me what he was doing. And at this point I'd seen Toy Story. Toy Story had come out, and I'd seen that. And so I knew a little bit about computer animation, just from you know, seeing that and being blown away by that. And so I just asked him what he was doing. He said, "Oh, I'm out in Northern California studying animation." And I was just like, "Are you serious?" Like, I didn't even know there were schools for this kind of thing, you know. And so he told me where he was, and he was at this college called Cogswell College. I had no idea what that was. So my girlfriend at the time, who I'm married to now, she booked tickets to fly out here for me to come and like see the school and meet the people and see my friend again and have him give me a tour and show me what he was working on. And so she kind of could see that I needed to do something else, something with a creative outlet. And so I'm super grateful for that. So she had me fly out, and I got to see what they were doing and loved it, and just couldn't believe that you could study this and then even get a job doing it. And I guess that's how I at least got into school. But you know, we took the traditional courses, and you know, had to do quite a bit of animation. Most of my stuff's probably horrible. I have some of it still, but it was cool. You know, we were taught by guys from. I remember one of my teachers. He was from Hanna-Barbera, and he would always, you know, tell us, "I led the strike at Hanna-Barbera." Like, that was his I don't know, battle cry that he would say, and he'd tell us, "Don't you ever do an internship that you don't get paid." Like, he was very adamant about, you know, not ripping animators off, and so that was cool to learn from a guy who, you know, came from a traditional background. And then he also, which is funny, he worked on Gumby, so he'd done some stop motion animation, and they actually brought Art CLOKEY. Art CLOKEY is the creative Gumby, and he came to the school and did a talk, and we got to talk to him about Gumby and how that was created, and took pictures with him. That was kind of cool to meet. A lot of people don't know about Art CLOKEY, but he's definitely an animation legend in my book. So I was getting ready to graduate, and I'd done a short film with Dave Russell, who actually works here also. And we kind of just hit it off when we were at school, and started doing projects together. And then we decided to do this short film as sort of our senior project. And I think that took about 9 months or something, and we finished that. And then you know, it was kind of, a lot of people were watching it at school and were liking it, and there was some buzz around it. And then one of my instructors saw it, and then this guy named Garov, who used to work at Double Fine years ago, he called this instructor of mine, Susan, and said, you know, "We're looking for somebody that can," I think they wanted someone that could model and rig. Mm-hmm. And so she mentioned my name, and then I sent my tape. Back then it was just tapes, so he sent my tape up here, and they watched it and called, and I guess they, I think they liked the story, and they saw that I could do rigging and I could do modeling. Excuse me, and so I came up for an interview.
So this was a CG movie?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I still have it. It's called Threads, and it's the animation is okay. The story is sweet. It's kind of got a sweet story, and there's a lot of aspects that I'm proud of from that film. I learned a lot from making that, and it was good to work with Dave. Anyway, so they hired me to come in, and so I did a cutscene, and then for Psychonauts, it's like my first cutscene was where Raz first goes into the caravan, and then he's stuck in an egg, and then he breaks out of this egg, and then when he breaks out of the egg, he's there's a bunny there, and so he's kind of in this nightmare, and that was my first cutscene at Double Fine, because they had very little as far as game Psychonauts when I came on. I mean, there was almost nothing. I mean, they were building the engine, and they had like 2 characters maybe. And I saw these pictures of what was called Dart, who was this D'Artagnan, who was now Raz. He kind of evolved. But seeing Scott Campbell's art on the walls, it's like, this is amazing. And I knew I got to work on this project. I mean, and when they called, I was so excited. So, I mean, I hit it off with Tim, I guess, pretty well. I mean, and since then we've been close. He's he's a really, I mean, he's my boss, but he's just a really, really close friend at this point. Someone that I, can go to about, all kind of, personal things I can talk to him about, and he's just a really good friend. And so, I hope that if I didn't work here someday, that we'd still be really close friends. But yeah, I found a home very early on, I guess, coming out of school. Sometimes you stay at a place for so long, and I see people jump around a lot, and I wonder if, am I supposed to be doing that? Like, am I doing something wrong? And I think that once in a while. But then I've seen people leave, and go try other things, and I've seen them come back, and for me that's kind of encouraging, because then it makes me realize I think it's okay that I'm still here, and if I feel like I'm progressing, in Double Fine we do different things. Every project is so different that you kind of are forced to grow. Where I think if you were doing just sequel after sequel, that might get tiresome. But because each project is just so different, you never get bored. So yeah, I mean, all the projects I've enjoyed, but Psychonauts is probably the dearest to me, and maybe that's just because of what we went through to finish it. I mean, Psychonauts was Brutal Legend was not too bad, at least for the animation team. I'm sure other teams got hit hard, but I mean, there were crunch times, but it was well managed, and I think we kind of knew it was a big budget. That helped, but Psychonauts was hard. Psychonauts was really hard, and I mean, luckily at the time I didn't have any kids. I was married, but didn't have any kids until near the end of the project. It was probably the worst time to have a baby. But yeah, that was a death march at the end. But I have to say, for a lot of us that worked on it, that sort of sealed everybody together in a way, because it was so difficult, and the hours were so long, and but we just like believed in it. I look back at it now, and I'm not 100% sure why so many. I mean, I stayed, and so I'm not sure why almost everybody stayed and finished that thing, and. I don't know, I'm not sure why. I mean, other than a loyalty to Tim and a belief in that project. Because it is I think it turned out really great. And I don't even know how that game got finished. I still don't know. I mean, and I had not played, I didn't really fully, I mean, because we were working so frantically and we'd like redone a lot of the stuff, and I didn't really know how it was all going to come together, and so I was really worried about it. And Tim had it all up in his head, so he knew what it was going to be. I think he did. But I just didn't. And so when I remember first playing through it, and just like, I couldn't believe it had all come together, and it was this coherent story. And because you work on, you'll get like this cutscene, and you'll get this cutscene that's in a completely different level, and you don't really know how it's all going to sort of tie together. And maybe film is like that too, when you just work on these small parts in film, and then once you see it all edited and put together, and then you're like, oh, okay, now I understand what this is all about. And that's kind of how Psychonauts was. I love that people are still playing it. My nephew called, this was a little while ago, but he called me and was all excited that he just finished Psychonauts, and it's nice to have worked on something like that people remember.